All right. Did you hit record an audition?
Yep, it's doing its thing.
All right, my audition is also doing its thing. So we just pause that preview so I don't see myself floating around multiple ways. Pretty much good to go. So I'll go start it. It's Wednesday, March 31st, 2021. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geek Nights. Tonight, we're reviewing a classic cartoon called The Simpsons. I'm going to get my vaccine finally on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, we became eligible. They told us in advance we'd be eligible on Tuesday, start right? So we couldn't make appointments till Tuesday. Of course,
I did check to see if I could make an appointment like Monday night. Of course I couldn't. And then at 7:59 on Tuesday, every site that I was using at least updated and immediately started working.
Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, as expected, there weren't any appointments available really, unless you went far away, right, from where we are.
I did end up deciding to just go to Staten Island, so I didn't have to wait.
Luck with that.
Yeah.
I decided to just be patient. I'm just like, I'll just wait until, I'm not going to sit here reloading all day, wasting my time. Right? I only got one life to live. I'll just wait until I can get one easily with just like a click. There's just plenty. Yeah, pick one. I'll wait until that time. That time would come, right? So I was only checking once, twice a day, like wake up, check it, right?
Yeah.
Go to check it, go to bed, right? See if just in case, most of the day, I looked at it, I think once in the middle of the day and it was like, nope, nothing, no.
Yeah. Early on I checked a lot, but it was clear that it wasn't going to happen. Like one would appear and it wasn't worth it. So I basically
I do want to congratulate whoever's running a lot of these sites, such as TurboVax, the official New York City site, all these sites. There were some problems. For example, at one point, the official New York City.gov site said like City Field available. You click on it, you fill out the form, and then when you finish the form, it's like, actually, just kidding, lol.
Yep. So I did learn something about that. The reason that was happening is that a lot of people, once you fill out that form once, if you change, like if you go back or click on a different link from TurboVax, it makes you fill the form out again and again.
Yeah. Well, you can. I think people are saying this tricks to.
Oh, the trick was real simple. If you just stay on the page and just change the date or the zip code, it'll just immediately refresh and keep everything else.
Regardless, the point is that I want to say, of course, there's no appointments, right? There's just supply and demand, right?
Well, what did the commentator say? Millions and millions of, quote, very online people suddenly were trying to get access to these vaccines.
But all of these websites that I tried, the various ones that were out there, they were all fast and up.
Yep.
Right? So take a lesson, people such as Blizzard, right? Going down when you get crushed.
Conventions where the Artist Alley application crashes literally every year.
On January 4th, right? Take notice. Something. All right.
Yeah, imagine if PAX badges went on sale and literally every adult in New York City was trying to get them at the same time.
Right, exactly. So good job keeping the site up, even though, of course, the inventory was down, right?
But the inventory is there. Like people are, if you're patient and persistent, you're gonna get one soon. It looks like.
Yeah. So what happened to me was, my doctor long ago, right? Is it's NYU doctor, right? So they have all kinds of apps and stuff. They're very modern, right? And they just sent a message to all the patients, and it was just like, hey, stop calling us, right? We got shit to do. We'll let you know, right? Where, they talked about all the stuff they're doing.
How will I know? You'll know.
Right. They were testing the vaccines themselves to see which ones they liked better and doing all kinds of stuff. They're like, we'll text you. So, of course, Tuesday, like the middle of the day, they texted me. They're like, you're eligible now, right? I didn't ask them I never communicated with them once. I was just in the system as a patient. And they said, here's the link. And it was a link to go to in my doctor's official app, right? They had a whole section for making an appointment. And they're like, here's all our locations, right? Choose the ones you're willing to go to. So I clicked all, and then I clicked the Long Island ones to deselect them and continue, right?
You can't go to that Long Island.
Yeah, and Tuesday, there were appointments on Long Island, and then by the end of Tuesday, there weren't any left. Some people took all those. So I was just like, okay, because I only checked it twice. This morning, I finish my little inside bike of the morning, right? My pretend commute to my work, which I can see from the bike 2 feet away. And I just go over to my computer before I take a shower. And I just press Control R one time. Just one time Control R for a reload on my doctor's page. And I see a bunch of green boxes. And it's not only is it not Long Island, it's the doctor's office that I go to. And they're just like a full set of times for pretty much all day Saturday. Pick any time you want. So I just click 10 a.m. and I clicked OK. And they're like, OK, you have an appointment 10 a.m. And then it texted me later in the day, like, you're coming at Saturday at 10 a.m., right? I'm like, all right.
Yep.
And I just patiently waited. I didn't waste my time reloading all day or anything like that. And so I'm going to go on Saturday.
It's exciting that it's all working and we're getting shots in our arms pretty quick, which leads us, it's a Wednesday, Animation Day, to a very relevant news that bridges what we just talked about and what we're about to talk about.
What news is that?
So there is an anime convention. Scott messaged me this a couple days ago, and all he said was something like, "You're gonna be mad," and I was like,
I'm telling Amanda this, and I was like, "An anime convention's gonna happen," and she's like, "Oh no!" But I'm like, "It's worse than that."
Yeah. So it's worse than that. SAC Anime.
It's extreme worse.
This isn't like Sacramento, but SAC Anime, I dug into it a little more. This con has a history of doing bad shit. Like, they invite the guests that other cons won't invite. Like,
I denounce SAC Anime.
I've only denounced 2 things in the world: Scott in any Civilization game and SAC Anime. So here's how egregious this is. One,
the opposite of endorse, denounce.
So SAC Anime is happening this weekend, like April 1st and 2nd.
Have you looked at a COVID graph? It's going up, people.
Yeah, and this ain't like New York City. This is a place where it's up.
Yep.
2, it is happening at the convention center that was giving vaccines out, and the vaccines are all going to be paused so the fucking Anime Con can happen. 3, this Anime Con should not be allowed to happen because per the rules of the region, the place it's in, you can't have conventions in the convention center. But you know what you're allowed to have in the convention center? Swap meets. There's a loophole.
There's a rule that you can have swap meets at half capacity, right?
So the SAC Anime
their convention as a swap meet.
Yep, and multiple people replied because I tweeted about this. Then I had to mute it because it got this thread is like still going on Twitter because people were mad about it, as they should be. But it's even worse than that. Apparently, according to numerous sources, this con was planned during COVID. Like, this was not like they planned this 5 years ago and they had to do something. It was planned during COVID and they classified it as a swap meet on purpose to make sure it happened.
Yeah, so never go to this con.
Yeah, SAC Anime is run by evil people. This is not that it's excusable, but it is not the case of a con was forced to run or go bankrupt. It was a case of this con actively tried to run during a pandemic.
For all that we can tell, that is true, right? It may not be true, but as far the information available to us, reported by reputable real news websites that at least appear to be real news websites, that appears to be the case. Therefore, that means, in summary, anyone who is running SAC Anime, the staff, the board of that con, whoever it's organized, owner, president, whatever, right? Those are people who think it is okay to literally risk human lives just to have an anime con and get together and cosplay for a weekend, right? They would literally, not exaggerating, like take a person who is alive and just murder them, right? In order to have a convention, and then a person is dead. They're okay with that. I mean, even one person would be too many, and they're potentially risking many people. Right?
Yep.
So they're just evil, bad people. And fuck their con.
Yeah, and we've said this before, but even if a con was, forced to run, like one of those situations we've talked about, the whole purpose of making an LLC is to limit your liability. It's right there in the name, limited liability company. If your choice is run your con or your LLC goes bankrupt, you are morally obligated to let your LLC go bankrupt. Because guess what? You can just make a new LLC and get the same staff and just start your fucking con again, like in a couple of years. Like it'll be fine.
Yep.
So yeah, fuck everyone involved in the management and planning of SAC Anime, and also do not go to SAC Anime.
You
Like,
don't say.
who is even going to
don't
this
say.
thing? Like that, like
People who properly believe the same thing as the people who run the con believe, which is that it is okay to risk human lives just to have.
you should have
weekend of
your
anime
message.
con.
Scott was like, "You're gonna be mad," and he sends this link, and I click on the link, and I was mad. But as I read the rest of the article, I just got
More
madder
mad.
and madder. It was Homer mad in bed face by the time I got to the bottom.
Yep. So there you go. And
Followed by
not-
Homer
not
says a
waste
naughty
any more
word.
breath on such trash people.
Yep. In some other news that is complex and behind the scenes, but is like it'll be interesting to see the real like what's going on here. Bandai Namco actually announced recently, like this month, a big reshuffling of all their subsidiaries. Because remember, you think, oh, Bandai. Bandai is a holding company, and there are a lot of like subsidiary companies under that. That's how a lot of
Yeah, you got Dragon Balls, you got
Yep.
freaking not Pokemon, you got Big Dogs,
there's a lot there.
Pac-Mans. There's a lot of stuff.
So they have rejiggered a lot of that together and consolidated. And we might be able to infer some things about the state of that industry, like that fandom industry based on this, because the reason they're mostly focusing on the US, France, and China, like subsidiaries in those three places. In light of reevaluating the direction of the company's plan in light of expected changes in, quote, customers' lifestyles and sense of value. Like there's something predicate, like caused them to make these changes. But they're basically merging everything into 3 units. They're going to have one unit that is entertainment, which is basically like toys and hobbies and network and all that stuff. One that's like IP production, which is merging their visual, like TV stuff and their music stuff together, and their like IP units. And then a third unit, the amusement unit, which I'm pretty sure is just the gaming stuff. And that's all we know. That is anime news. That doesn't sound super exciting because
I'd probably go check out, see what the Gunpla communities are saying, right? Because Bandai makes all the Gunplas. So.
Yep. Where a fan will care is either this consolidation might also come along with some business line that fan cares about not being prioritized or being shut down. That often happens in mergers
Or
like
new
this.
ones appear.
Yep, new ones appear. One could be revitalized that's been dead as part of a play. There's a lot.
Things might become accessible or inaccessible in different places in the world.
Yep.
Right?
There might be more cross work, like the visual and music production units and the IP units might like do stuff that was difficult to do before because they want to cross things that were previously managed by 2 separate subsidiaries.
Right. All we can say for sure is that something unknown. So
The listener immediately is like, "Uh-oh, Tekken."
Right. We know so little, right? It's basically something related to some of the stuff that Bandai does in some way will likely change in the nearest future.
Yep.
That's it. I mean, that's how little we know. But it's still, the news is not that the thing has changed yet, so you can't, right? The news is keep an eyeball in that direction, wait for it. That's the news.
So talk about Penguindrum.
Oh, okay. Yeah, just a tiny news, right? So 10 years ago,
God damn, I still haven't even watched it.
Ikuhara, the Utena guy, right? Everyone knows Kuniko Ikuhara, infamous
Gao Gao.
anime creator.
Yurikuma Arashi.
Created this TV anime called Penguindrum that we didn't watch, right? But
Everyone
planned to
says
watch
it's
at some-
good. Just
Yeah, I'm
didn't
sure.
get around to it.
The bear one was good, right? And people said I watched a few episodes of the newer one.
Kappa one?
The Kappa one.
That one's also good. I think we reviewed it.
What little I watched of the Kappa one was good. Anyway.
I gotta finish it.
But yeah, Penguindrum, for a show that's 10 years old that you thought was like a show that, like most anime, happens, ends, and then fades from consciousness. They are coming out with a compilation movie of Penguindrum 10 years after its original release for some reason. I guess there must be some value or money behind it or something. That's interesting and cool. If maybe that might become usually I'm not huge on compilation movies. Even people who say like, those original Gundam compilation movies, all right, watch the 3 movies instead of watching the original Gundam series, which can drag a bit. I personally would just watch the original Gundam series. I got time for that, right?
Yep. Of course, I would say that neither one of us watched Penguindrum.
That's true. But the point is, as someone who, I think that's why there might be some appeal in the compilation movie. It's like, oh, well, I didn't watch it, but it's like, watch this compilation movie. Oh, well, if I had watched it, I'd probably be like, man, who needs a compilation movie?
Yeah, I've never in my life seen something and then later when a compilation movie came out said, hot damn, I really got to get on top of that.
Exactly. But when you haven't seen it and, you're not,
in fact, usually you get a rumor like, oh, there's going to be a Ghost in the Shell movie, and I get real pumped, and then I find out it's a compilation movie, and my interest drops back to 0.
Yeah, but it's like, oh, maybe I'll be worth watching a compilation movie of Penguindrum instead of watching the real thing. Who knows? But it's coming. And I think the most fascinating thing is not that the compilation movie will be good, bad, worth watching or not. It's that Penguindrum as a franchise and a property isn't dead, right? It's still.
If they made an Utena compilation movie, I would actually be here for that.
How could you? I might have to make 3 like the Gundam ones did.
Yeah.
That might work.
Utena 1.111.1.
All right, so here's the news. Today is Trans Visibility Day. Right?
Oh yeah.
So let's check this news, right? Very relevant news. So when it comes to wikis, right? There's Wikipedia. Everyone knows Wikipedia, and the thing with Wikipedia is that they will cover a wide variety of topics, but Wikipedia refuses to go super in depth on narrow topics, right? Even, because there are some things in the world that there is just so much information on, right? Like, Pokemon, let's say, right? But they don't put all the Pokemon info on Wikipedia, right? Just like you don't put everything there is to know about turtles in the Encyclopedia Britannica. Does that even still exist? I don't know.
Well, with this, it's especially things that are fictional.
Especially, yes.
Yeah. Like there are Wikipedia articles for like every kind of boat, but that's a very different.
But they don't go into, super detail, right? So that's why we have things like Bulbapedia to give you all the Pokemon information, right? And there's a website, Fandom. Is it just fandom.com? But they run wikis about all the, for all the different major fandoms, including the famously pun-named Wookieepedia, which has all the Star Wars information about literally everything Star Wars ever, right? Is cataloged on the Wookieepedia. Because obviously that is so much information that Wikipedia doesn't need to be hosting. And what happened is they had a policy, is the trans related part, right? They had policies on there that were like, look, someone may have, transgendered, right? And have a new name. And, regardless of how you feel about that, right? Their policy was to use the names of people that were in the credits of the thing. So if there was a comic book, a Star Wars comic book, and they were making a page about it, and the writer was a transgender person, and their name at the time of writing the book was different from their name now, they were going to use the dead name, right? Which is bad for a lot of reasons.
Yep. And even worse, they chose to die on this hill for a while.
Yes. But has the very, very tiny, somewhat barely understandable reason of like, someone might look up the person because they have the comic, right? And if they didn't have the dead name up there, you wouldn't find the person.
Well,
right?
meanwhile, Wikipedia or IMDb actually handles that very well in that they will have a page for each person, and it has their real, like whatever name they go by is the name there. The dead names only ever appear in a separate class of for a specific film credited as X for data integrity purposes.
Right. I mean, and the way, to give a good example, right, is like, someone like Sting, right? I bet if I go to IMDb, I haven't done this, so I'm just guessing, but I'm willing to bet if you go to IMDb and look for Sting, the name is going to be Sting, and his real name, right, quote, real legal name, is it like, what is it? Forget it. Something really like sounds dorky, like Gerald or something.
IMDb is pretty slow. I'm digging through. I'm looking it up right now.
It's Gordon. I think it's Gordon.
There we go. Steve Borden.
Steve Borden. Okay.
He is listed as, oh no, that's a wrestler. Never mind.
Okay. The point is, right, is like
Gordon
by Sting.
Matthew Sumner.
It was Gordon.
He is listed as Sting in IMDb, and
Exactly.
but it lists for each thing he's in what he's credited as there, but the name that is his name associated with his like page is just Sting.
Exactly, right? I'm pretty sure that Gordon whatever is his legal name, right?
Well, they do it better. They also say, like, they point out, they don't even say it's his legal name or whatever. They just say he was born with that name.
Yeah, okay, sure. Good. That's fine.
There's a lot of nuance to how to handle these situations, but Wookieepedia was taking a arbitrary, hard line that was harmful for no good reason.
Right. So here's the why Wookieepedia itself was bad, but the end result of the whole situation ended up good. So what Wookieepedia was doing is they were putting it up for a vote using their existing processes.
Ooh.
Right.
All I can think of is that scene in Shattered Earth trilogy where someone puts up a vote similar to this, and someone. Yeah, there's a moment where a character goes over to the ballot box, blows it up, and says, you don't get to vote on who counts as people.
That's right. Trans rights are human rights. You can't have votes on human rights, right? It's like, if there's, as a Jew, if there's one Jew, right, in a room, and it's like, all right, let's have a vote on should we kill the Jews. It's like, that's not how it works, right?
You vote on things like, should taxes be 4.1% or 4.3%?
Exactly, right? So this is why, in democracy, you talk about majority rules, minority rights. We vote on things, but anything that is the right of minorities, you can't vote on that. It just is.
Yep.
Right? Deal with it. So fandom, the Wookieepedia was going about things all the wrong way, voting on human rights, which they shouldn't be doing. And luckily, I don't know if all just luckily, but goodly, fandom, the overarching, service that runs and hosts all these wikis. They're the technology platform that all the wikis on fandom are governed individually, but fandom itself, runs the servers. So they have a terms of service for any Wookiee, for any of the wikis that they host, right? And so even though the wikis might vote on their own internal, governance issues, they're still beholden to fandom itself. And fandom came through and was like, look, you can't vote on this because, having all these dead names is violating our terms of service.
Yeah.
Right? Of not respecting human rights. So shove it, Wookieepedia, right? Your voting is over, right? Get those dead names out of here, right? And that also applies to all the other wikis hosted by fandom, which is very good news.
You can read this Gizmodo article gives you 100% of the details on this story.
If you really want all the details and all the history, because there is a lot of history going down here with Wookieepedia and such, all the details have been thoroughly documented by journalists, and so you don't need to hear them from my mouth, because I didn't read all of them. I just read enough to tell you the news.
Yep. Yeah, IMDb has another interesting policy that's good. Even if you if your birth name is not credited anywhere, they will not, if you want it gone, they will remove it because there's no relevance to their database to that.
I agree. That's also a good policy.
Yeah,
right?
they seem to have a pretty good policy here. Now that I'm digging through it.
Mm-hmm.
So in some other news, before we get to our main bit, this is relevant. It's not really news, but it's a recent article. And I don't want to go too in-depth on it because we're going to probably spend a lot of time talking about The Simpsons. But you can guess why I bring this up. This is an article on CBR about why King of the Hill, which was very popular at the time of its cancellation, was canceled. It's not a bunch of huge new insights. This is not a lot of new information. But it talks a lot about why a popular Fox show might be canceled while it's very popular.
Changes at the network. That's usually what the story is.
Yeah, but there's also
that's what killed Disney Afternoon. We learned that.
Yeah, but sometimes it's also things around the creative staff either out of ideas or
like GeekNights, yeah.
Yeah, or maybe they think the show did what it needed to do. They want to move on to something else. There's a lot of reasons for this kind of thing. Fox has never officially given a reason for this one. So we can only speculate, but the article talks about it a bit.
Reasons regularly, or right on?
Sometimes shows get canceled and an explicit official reason is given, like ratings were below expectations. Sometimes no reason is given. The only thing we know for sure, objectively, is that the time slot that King of the Hill was in was taken over by The Cleveland Show.
Okay.
But It's very interesting that The Simpsons is still going.
Yeah, all I have to say about King of the Hill is like I didn't really watch it. It was one of those shows that I would always see starting or ending before or after other shows, and then change the channel away. But in more recent years, right, I know people who are appreciators of it. Right,
I'm an appreciator of King of the Hill. It's one of those like really low key funny shows, but it's also kind of real.
So I don't have an opinion of like whether I didn't like it or dislike it. I just didn't watch it. Right, so. But seeing other people's appreciation of it adjacent to me, right, and people like spreading memes from it, I'm like, my now current thought on it is like, there was probably something good there that I didn't see because I didn't watch it.
Yep.
That's my feeling on that show.
You probably don't need to go back and watch all of it.
Yeah, I'm not gonna do that, but that's what my.
There's talk of a new King of the Hill. Set later, but same characters.
Queen of the Valley.
Like I think all the characters will be 15 years older.
Okay, whatever.
I don't know. We'll see. But I was a big our family was a big fan of Mike Judge, like even from the early Beavis and Butthead days. So when King of the Hill was announced, we were all on board. And honestly, King of the Hill is one of the funnier like American primetime cartoons there ever was. It's no first 10 seasons of Simpsons. But it's definitely a solid show. You want to talk about Keanu Reeves' ultra-violent comic?
Oh, yeah, I forgot. So this is sort of a geek bite and sort of a news, right? So there was a comic book listed on the comic book order form called Berserker with some vowels removed, right?
It will not hit you like a truck, however.
Yes, people were making all sorts of Berserker jokes, right? But it caught my eye because on the credits, right in the cover, were two names that I recognized. Matt Kint, right? Which, is a great comic writer. He's written things like MCND, right? And the spy thing, what was it called? I have it on the shelf and it's not turning around to look at it. Anyway, I like the comics I've read that have been written by Matt Kint. And Keanu Reeves, the famous person that even I know who that is, right? A bench sitting guy, right? Right? So you see Keanu Reeves' name on the front of a comic book, and it's like, did he actually write this comic book? And on the cover of the comic book is an illustration of Keanu Reeves, wearing guns and shit, like he's ready for the typical movie that he's typecast to play in. Okay, so I go and I'm like, well, I guess I'm ordering that comic book. I'm like, send me volume 1. I wanna read it, right? I'll see what the hell's in it if he actually wrote it. And I read volume 1, not volume 1, the first floppy issue, right? And in that book, it was Keanu Reeves is basically this immortal dude who can't die, sort of Wolverine-esque. He gets really beat up and shot and destroyed, and he goes back to this lab and they can sort of fix him, right? And he's out doing wars and stuff, but also he's like a zillion years old, right? Like caveman old. And that's sort of the plot. And not long after I get this first, issue and read it and see what the deal is, there's announced they're making animation of it and it's like the license, right? And I'm like, already the first issue just came out, right? So sometimes we see things where a comic is like 10 years old before it gets adapted, like Invincible. And sometimes we see things, it's like, one floppy comic comes out. They're like, licensed adaptations, they're coming, let's go.
Comics we've talked about this a lot on Geek Nights. Comics have become one of the biggest floats to see if something can be turned into an animation or a movie or a show.
That's been true for like 15 to 20 years already.
Yeah, that's why we bring it up a lot on Geek Nights.
But I'm saying is that's why I still read comics and don't watch a lot of TV. Just get the original biz. Why, something so strong that is inspiring someone to invest money in it, right? Whether that thing the adaptation they want to make happens or not, mouse guard, right? The original thing must have some incredible strength that's worth checking out. Just constantly read comics and you won't need to bother with the other stuff. But yeah, if you are a fan of the works of Keanu Reeves in which he is typecast as action dude, such as John Wick's, Matrix, etc., you will probably enjoy this because that's what the fuck it is. And if you're not, then you're not. So ignore it.
Yep. And last, before we get into things of the day and everything, I know I've mentioned this every other Wednesday or so, but Great Pretender, all I'm going to say is now that I've seen everything but the last arc, people are sleeping on this show. I cannot understand.
I was going to watch it. We would have done a show on it today.
I cannot understand why more anime people are not talking about this show. This is not a Cowboy Bebop. Like, Cowboy Bebop is an S-rank show. But right now, having seen all but the last arc, this is an A- show. And depending on how the last arc goes, which appears to be like, now you know all these characters, now it's going to get like more serious. Like, here's the real meat. Like, here's the story, like how Cowboy Bebop did to a degree. This could easily be an A anime in the end. It has surprised me so many times, but it's so weird that I see almost no one talking about this show.
I just a very quick note. Also, I'm continuing at least to watch Voltus 5 much more than Rim has.
I'm like 10 episodes in, but I feel like based on what you've said to me, I got to go deep.
We're on episode 20 something, and every episode, except for like the dog episode, which is just like a random monster of the week episode. Other than that one episode, every episode, like something happens. They push. The status quo does not stay still. Like they are pushing hard. It is quite interesting to see a super robot toy selling show that keeps going, right? It doesn't let up. So, you know,
all right.
Let me order food. Hold on.
All right, order your food. I'll queue up the things of the day. My boy, the Choose Bruce.
You want the chicken sandwich? Yeah. Okay. There it is.
Mm-hmm. I was about to click and poke at some other things, but it'll actually mess up my screen capture of your face.
I ordered the food.
All right, cool.
Go now.
Let me
yeah.
put a little mark in there. Things of the day. So, my favorite character in Adventure Time is actually LSP. In terms, like, there's something hilarious about that character and that voice and everything. But
LSP is definitely a top 5. Well, I don't know. There might be enough characters, but you know, way up there, highly ranked.
Yep. Like LSP is right up there with like Marceline and Princess Bubblegum, and like there's.
I actually, you know, I put I'm a person who likes weird side characters because they're more interesting, right? Even when main characters do have interesting things about them, which Adventure Time, all the main characters obviously do. They're always a little less out there, right, than side characters because you need to use them more often. If they're out there, they run out of material and don't work. But the out there-ness of side characters always makes me like them more, even though you don't see them often.
But I like this character a lot, but I know Scott is particularly a fan of the Choose Goose.
I think Choose Goose might be the number one. As like Prismo Cosmic Owl, Choose Goose is like
And it's very telling because now this is out of date. It only gets up through Elements, which is near the end of Adventure Time, but there have been some appearances post that are not in this video. This is all of Adventure Time up through the end of Elements, but only when Choose Goose is visible.
Yep.
Not even if he's talking. He has to be on screen or it doesn't count. It is 2 minutes and 35 seconds long.
They took all the frames in which Choose Goose was on screen and cut those frames out and pasted them in order, and that's it.
My favorite bit with Choose... I mean, the thing we quote the most is the armor thing. But my favorite thing with him ever is when Finn buys that cursed sword, and then they come back, and he's like, you didn't buy it from me, what the fuck? Like, he's pissed at
He's like, what are you doing? Yeah, he's angry because, like, they went to another store. He's like, you went to go shop at the Grass Hut, huh? Yeah, you bunch of jerks. Why don't you, I thought you were loyal customers of the Choose Goose.
Like, he's just...
Now you're coming to me for help, huh? Yeah.
He's just so mad in that scene.
Yeah.
So
The thing I like about Choose Goose is that Choose Goose is simultaneously silly looking, right?
Yep.
It's just like this floppy goose thing.
though we know canonically he can walk, we didn't learn that until
Sure. Right. Well, yeah, but he's just floppy looking.
Yep.
He is a merchant, which is totally cool in a fantasy universe, selling cool stuff, right? That's always everyone loves, item shops, right? He rhymes in a silly way, talks in a funny way, but otherwise is perfectly competent, intelligent, not foolish. He's just a quality merchant doing merchant biz, right? He's not like doesn't have any issues. Just going about his biz.
Mm-hmm. So what do you got?
So what do I have? So the NWHL, after having to suspend their season with their failed bubble in Lake Placid,
Which was a
they
shame
went
considering
away.
people were watching that stuff.
Yeah, it was on Twitch and everything.
Yeah.
They were. They've managed to come back and finish it. They basically finished it by just having, a 1 weekend deal, right? A little semifinals, finals kind of thing. And they managed to get that broadcast on NBC Sports, which was exciting. But it also meant that you couldn't watch it on Twitch in the United States. If you're in other countries, it was still on Twitch, but in US Twitch region blocks, you could use a VPN, I guess. But if you're in the US, you had to use NBC Sports to watch it. The champions, the Isabel Cup champions of 2021 is Boston, because Boston needs more sports champions. It's like, whatever. Regardless, it was still glad to see that they managed to finish it and didn't just cancel the whole thing. And I'm sure that next year there's been talk of like adding a team from Montreal, so that'll bring them up to, even more teams. 7 teams, would that be 7 teams? But yeah, it'll be a lot more exciting. And they'll hopefully have a real-ish season next time, not plagued by plague.
Yep.
So to somewhat celebrate this person, what is their name on Twitter?
Adam Stevens, Color-Filled Mind.
Adam Stevens, Color-Filled Mind on Twitter, took, because there obviously is not an NWHL video game, although there should be, right? Took NHL 21 EA Sports, and where you can customize your teams and your rosters and your jerseys and right? You can customize. That's how every EA Sports game lets you do that these days. And he basically set up the whole NWHL, right? Jerseys, player rosters, everything inside of NHL 2021. And I think that's pretty awesome. And there's a whole Twitter thread they posted with all the screenshots and descriptions of the whole thing going on here. So that's pretty cool, I say. And I hope, as Adam Stevens points out, that actually he got it as close as he could, but because of the limitations, there weren't even enough hairstyles available, right? In an NHL 21, you probably couldn't even get a Mika's Advantage ad going on with the limitations and hairstyles they got, right? So step up your game, EA Sports, right? It's in the game now, so it has to be in the game. That's what your
Wasn't Penny Arcade was just making fun of EA for bringing out a new golf game. They were like, EA, come on.
Yep.
EA does not have a great track record for, there's the people who play EA sports games don't overlap as much with the people who play almost all other games. It's an interesting divide.
If you're out there and you want to compete with EA Sports, right? But you can't because they got all those licenses like Madden and shit, right? There are plenty of women's sports leagues, I'm sure, that you could make very happy by paying them to license, their team logos and players and everything.
And you know what? If you don't have to address that core market of the people who play EA games, you might be able to make better games too.
Yeah, you could just make there's no reason the video game couldn't be, even better, right? Why if you came out with NWHL 21, right? Somehow you managed to develop it all in a year, and it was better than NHL 21. There's no reason it couldn't be.
Yeah.
Why couldn't it be? People would play that, right? You might force EA to buy your company and incorporate your thing into their lineup. I don't know.
So in the meta moment, the Geek Nights Book Club book is The Tale of Genji. We're reading it, and just follow along with us. I think the trajectory is probably something like end of May or June. We could probably do the episode, is what I'm feeling.
Ooh, you're reading that fast, huh?
So I was, but this week I've been too busy to read, so I slowed down a lot.
Same.
Okay, good. because I was going
reading
real
until, like,
fast and I hit a busy wall.
Yeah. Luckily, no new video games have been released to like take me away.
Yeah, unluckily, what was made me busy this week was I actually started playing Hearts of Iron. God damn it, that game is.
What's made me busy is I'm actually doing work at work.
Oh,
Uh-oh.
that clock never rings.
Yeah, I know, right?
You always make fun of me when I'm like, I'm busy with work stuff.
No, I'm hopefully gonna finish it all, and then I'll be able to stop working for the remainder of
My life.
month, right? Yeah.
So yeah, let's just get right into it because this is a big topic. Way back, I'm gonna link to this, but I'll warn you, this was 2006 from and Scott. We did a show called Television of Our Youth, and we talked about all the shows we watched when we were young. I am sure we talked about The Simpsons at some point in that episode.
I'm sure we've talked about The Simpsons at many points throughout the life of this podcast.
There have been 15 more years of The Simpsons since we did that episode, which is more seasons of The Simpsons than we have seen.
That's true.
That's why I want to bring that up. We might have talked about The Simpsons 15 years ago. I think to this date, like I have seen about a quarter of all Simpsons episodes.
I have probably seen no Simpsons episode that came out between when we did that podcast and now.
I did.
If we had done a Simpsons podcast on that day, it would probably have similar material to the podcast we're about to do, other than the fact that we're talking about how there were 15 years of time.
I remember a while ago,
Insane.
AV Club said something like, we're not going to bother reviewing every Simpsons episode anymore.
Yeah.
But it's the fascinating thing about The Simpsons, like the overarching theme of this episode, I think, is that it looms terrifyingly large in not just the pop culture of people our age, but like on the internet. Like The Simpsons is so deeply ingrained in so many places. And yet, pretty much everyone on Earth agrees that only the first 10-ish seasons were good.
Yeah, I think the only kinds of properties, right, in the world that are like big enough to like be on Simpsons level would be things like Pokemon. I guess all Disney combined, right? Not any one Disney, right? But like just, the full Disney loadout, right? Or like, maybe even the full Warner Brothers loadout, but all of them together, right? Could be on like the Simpsons level of bigness, right? Like Gundam is, I don't think, as big as Simpsons. Close, I guess, because Pokemon's bigger than that, right?
Yeah, because remember, we're not talking about number of episodes. Like there's like One Piece episode 4,000 or what. But
Pokemon, I think it got to be at least close to 10 years younger than Simpsons is. So yeah, it's just unbelievably huge. I'm sure there are several Simpsons only podcasts. For us to do one episode on it, it's like we can't even scratch the surface of. But what's going on there.
It's interesting that it's one of the rare shows where it would be very easy for people like us about our age to say, oh yeah, I liked X when I was young and it was good, but then it got bad and everyone who likes it now is stupid. But this is like the one case where everyone has nostalgia for like this one era of The Simpsons, but it seems like it is like 100% legit, that feeling. And what I've got up on the screen here, and I'm just looking at, because it really there's a lot of analysis like this. Someone did an analysis of the IMDb rating, just like what do people rate episodes of this show for all of The Simpsons, and it maps 1-to-1 with my understanding and feeling and thoughts on The Simpsons.
It's like, yeah, I see that these newer episodes that I've never watched are ranked lowly compared to the ones from our heyday, right? But it's like, is that really because they're worse, or is it because the audience of I don't know, I have no numbers, has The Simpsons continued to capture the new audience as time has gone on, or because we're the prime people.
I watched it from the Tracy Ullman show. My family would watch this show religiously.
Right. This show came out into being when we were in like 5th, 6th grade, I guess, right?
What?
The late 80s?
What? 5th, 6th grade? It was before that.
I remember being in like elementary school cafeteria.
I don't think you started watching it on the Tracy Ullman show like our family did.
Pretty sure it was 5th grade when The Simpsons came out.
1989?
Anyway. I was in kindergarten in 80. Oh, okay, maybe a little earlier than that. I don't know.
Yeah, I was. We would watch the Tracy Ullman Show as a family, and the Simpsons, like the precursors to the Simpsons, were on that show as like animated skits.
Right.
And we watched those like the night they aired as a family.
Right, and then it became its own show.
Yeah.
Created by Matt Groening, who also did lots of like little.
And I think you don't understand, like if you're younger than us, that TV was still like in American culture in particular, like TV was a big deal.
Internet.
Yeah.
There was no internet.
So when a new show came out, especially an animated show, especially a controversial animated show, because The Simpsons was like weirdly controversial for like the first 4 years of its run. Like,
so when the show was new, right? It's like, you know, I guess the thing that preceded it that you would compare it to would be like the Flintstones, right? Like a cartoon that was on prime time, that was, you know, based on a family, right? You know, it's Honeymooners-esque. You know, Simpsons has some of that Honeymooners DNA in it as well, clearly, or at least the early Simpsons, right?
Well, Simpsons has a lot of the DNA of all the early sitcoms.
Yes.
It's almost like they took the best techniques of all the early sitcoms.
Long-running, ridiculously popular, right? So, you know, The Simpsons had a lot of that same formula, only, you know, refreshed, right? You know, for the late 80s, early 90s times. And yet it was super controversial because it's like, you know, you had all the same people you see now getting mad about, you know, Lil Nas X. And they're like, oh, you know, kids watching this, it's so violent and you know, heinous and dirty and you know, uncouth things are happening.
I went to an amusement park.
Kids can't be watching.
When I was in 5th grade, we went to an amusement park, and I had a Bart Simpson shirt on, and the amusement park made me turn it inside out, or they wouldn't let our family in.
Wow.
Like,
don't have a cow, man.
Yep, the shirt was the Don't Have a Cowman shirt. Bart Simpson was seen as too subversive to display in public by a scary number of people when we were kids.
Meanwhile, Bart Simpson is actually like the most corporate possible, right? It's like, might as well be Mickey Mouse at this point.
But also in that era, Bart Simpson, like the worst thing Bart Simpson ever did in any Simpsons episode I ever saw, like Eric Cartman was worse than that within seconds.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing is like the original Simpsons, the sort of, you know, the image of it was, it's mostly about, you know, there's this family, but the main character is Bart, who's this bad, you know, sort of troublemaking kid, is not a role model for your kids, right? So you don't want your kids watching. But the show, first of all, Bart didn't really, you know, other than like, you know, mild pranks, it's like, what misbehaving stuff does Bart actually do on?
I mean, later on, there's like the episode where Bart, quote, goes too far. Like there's a few things like that happen. He does flood the school at one point.
Yeah, but some of those things like accidents too, right? Or like
well, like the dog in the vent was a legit accident.
Right. It's like, you know, he wasn't like purposefully doing.
Are you calling me a liar?
Right.
We can't quote the fucking Simpsons. This will go on forever. I'm just gonna nip that in the bud right now. I caught myself.
But like, you know, the episode like Stampy the elephant. He's like, he just innocently cares about this elephant. It causes trouble, but he's not like trying to have an elephant stomp the town down or anything like that, you know.
Yep. But I guess
like the show transfers quickly, right? After those first few seasons, it's like, really, it's a Homer-focused show, and because the character of Homer changes as well, right?
The Simpsons was the first time in my life where I recognized this concept of the A plot and the B plot of a show.
Yeah, well, every episode has an A plot and a B plot. That's the whole thing.
Yep.
But yeah, the character of Homer changes after, you know, the earlier episodes, right? Earlier seasons, from being more of like a bad, mad dad to the sort of, you know, dope Homer that you are familiar with.
Well, Homer went through these eras, kind of like Lupin. Like there was loving but just bad at things Homer, who moved into like kind of stupid Homer to evil Homer. And then there was like evil Homer who was weirdly cunning, like a dangerous animal. And then like borderline offensive stereotype of a mentally challenged person Homer. And they've like just oscillated around what Homer is over the years. And I don't even know what Homer's like now. I literally have not seen an episode since season 13.
Yeah, I have no idea. But yeah, that, I think, but the show quick got away from that, being about Bart the bad kid, right?
Yep.
To being about, the family as a whole, right? Or even some episodes are just about, different characters in the town. If Simpsons family's not even there.
Yep. Very slowly, they started like Mo would have more speaking lines. Like one by one, they would like, we need to freshen the show up. Bring one of the characters in, hand him 2 knives.
That's how they got so many episodes, is that by fleshing out this town and this cast of characters, they could start making episodes about different characters, right? We got the famous steamed hams, right? Chalmers and Skinner. It's like, talk about side characters, right? Chalmers. It's like, right? But everyone knows who that is.
Yep.
Somehow,
But like,
it's like
the reason I love the show so much, other than like it was the era when there was television and it was literally the funniest thing on television at the time. Because like, what was he going to compete with? Like SNL was never funny. So, but basically, the show, once it came into its own, and I didn't recognize this until later when I started to actually care and learn about like when writers changed in the show, and you can sort of see like patterns. The Simpsons did something that sort of revolutionized this kind of comedic television. The show was dense with jokes to the point that it made other, especially starting like season 3 or 4, especially season 4, to where it made all the other comedy shows I would watch as a kid just seem slow and plodding and sparse and unfunny as a result.
Even if you watch something like Seinfeld, right, which is, less old than The Simpsons, right? But which started and ended in the time The Simpsons has aired. Seinfeld's kind of slow, right? It was fine at the time, but if you watch it now, it'll be like joke. They'll tell a joke, and then like you'll just see Jerry like standing there looking at someone after he says the funny line.
Hello, Newman.
Right.
Laugh track.
There'll be a pause, a laugh track, and like nothing is happening, right? And The Simpsons, there isn't times where nothing is happening. It's
like there is like the density of jokes. There'll be like a visual gag simultaneous to a character joke, and then there'll be a background joke, like all in the span of 6 seconds.
Yep, you'll have, you have the A plot and the A plot, B plot, right? Every episode, the standard formula at least is to intro the episode with this one plot, and then that
it's hot. There's a heat wave in Springfield. The pool truck has come to town.
Exactly. Then you transfer to the second plot. That's really the meat of the episode.
Homer buys a pool.
Exactly. But then somehow that original plot that you started the episode with comes and ties in probably at the end, but not necessarily.
Originally, they tie in pretty directly. Like one would just directly cause the second one. But then the show started to do what you're describing, where the first plot would kind of go off. The second plot would spring up sort of out of nowhere. And then they tie together at the end in a hilarious confluence.
But as you're exploring this main plot, or even either one of the plots, right? You're seeing how, it goes on over time, and you're also seeing how it impacts different characters, right? So it's sort of like, okay, we've got this pool in Homer's backyard. What happens with Milhouse in the pool?
Millpool.
What happens, right? What happens with Bart in the pool?
The end of that episode with Martin.
Right. What happens with Flanders in the pool, right? It's like, I don't even know if Flanders is in the pool. I don't remember how long ago this was, but it's like, you can get lots and lots of jokes out of that, right? It's like, okay, they're doing, I'm just making stuff up. I don't remember episodes that do this, but it's like, you'll be, characters might be going from A to B, and they might stop in at, the racist Quickie Mart or somewhere else, right? And suddenly you're telling jokes with other characters. They stop in at Moe's Tavern, right? For a quick joke and then back out, right? They're got the same setup, and you're just hitting throughout the town or throughout wherever at different angles and different characters, right? And even like Grim said, sometimes in the background. It's like, okay, so there's a main thing going on in Moe's Tavern, right? The main joke is Homer and Moe talking about something, and Barney's doing something in the background, right?
Yep.
To throw in a quick side joke, right? To sort of fill the space there.
And if you read like interviews of people working in the writer's room, Like during that era when they hit the maximum density of jokes per second was the era when they were just working themselves to death. Like it's kind of like game design and the game Advance Wars, and people would say, "Oh, why is it so hard to make a game like this? Like, why don't you make more?" It takes so much effort to make something like that so dense with quality that I don't think that pace was even like reasonably sustainable.
Yeah.
And they were killing themselves to write it.
So of course, the joke came eventually from another long-running show, South Park, right? Like Simpsons did it.
Simpsons did it.
They've been running so long, and not only have they been running so long, but the shows were so dense. What story could you tell, right? That The Simpsons has not already told, right? They're running out of ideas, like GeekNights is.
Yep. And not even just the same story. You can't use like the same joke multiple times too soon.
Yep.
Like Sneed's feed and seed. You can't have that in the background again or a similar joke again for at least a decade. Granted, that means they can use a joke 3 times if they follow the decade rule.
Sure. But it's like, the Simpsons has done pretty much everything that can be done. How does it still go on? Right?
I think part of it too is that it still makes its money.
Blood comes from the stone.
But like very online people, like I have a lot more options than watching TV. So it was this perfect confluence of TV was the only way to get a lot of like this kind of entertainment at the time, coupled with the show was literally at a peak that had not existed in the world in that format before. And then both, they couldn't sustain that pace for all the reasons we talked about, and the internet literally changed everything. And those are the two forces that I think caused The Simpsons to become deeply mediocre.
Yeah, I think even if, right, The Simpsons had put out the exact same episodes, no episodes were changed, right? What really, I think, made it bigger in my life and the lives of many people than otherwise would have was that it was syndicated so heavily.
I'd turn on the TV, random Simpsons episodes on, sure.
There was in the 90s, right, especially pretty much mid to late 90s when I was watching the most TV, right, before I went to college and stopped watching TV pretty much, right? It wasn't just Simpsons is on Sunday night. That was only when the new episodes came on after football.
Yeah, reruns are on every goddamn day multiple times.
Every single day we would watch, right? So because we're in Connecticut, even at the time when we didn't have cable, okay? No cable, but we're in Connecticut. So the antenna picks up Connecticut stations and New York stations.
Yep.
So we would have like Fox 5, which was like New York City Fox, right? And then we would have like Channel 20, some Connecticut Fox affiliate, channel that's where you watch like your Sailor Moon when you came home from school.
Yeah.
Right? And you could watch at like before dinner, right? Like I don't forget the exact times, 5:30, something like that. A Simpsons on one. And then the other one would immediately after have another different Simpsons episode.
Yep.
Right?
There was a back-to-back. It was Simpsons. I forget what was before or after.
A full hour of Simpsons before dinner. And I think there were at some points, I don't remember, it feels like there were times where you could get 3 Simpsons in a day on broadcast television where I lived.
But also, there'd be a new episode.
At the right time.
This is an old time. There'd be a new episode every week.
Yep.
No one had seen that episode before, and literally everyone you knew would watch that episode except the Christian families that wouldn't let their kids watch it, who would usually try to sneak over to someone else's house. So, like, I would go to middle school the next day, and literally every single person I knew had also watched that Simpsons episode. And you can't underestimate, like, if you were in middle or high school with me, or with a lot of people our age, people were just quoting The Simpsons at each other as, like, background noise.
Yep. If it was just like this language, right? The same way we have a language of memes today, right?
There was a language of The Simpsons, which I think is why The Simpsons became...
There were no internet memes. We couldn't be like, yo dog, right? I put an X in your X.
And it's noteworthy how The Simpsons are still used as memes today, even by people who didn't grow up during that. And most Simpsons memes are from those first like 13-ish seasons for some reason.
Yeah.
Some reason.
Yeah. But even if you didn't watch it on Sunday night, right? That episode that just came out Sunday night would get syndicated within a year or two, right? And before DVD box sets, you could not afford all VHS of Simpsons unless you were rich.
We taped every single one.
Everyone, but other people didn't. So
We
it's
copied those tapes and passed them around.
sure, but thanks to the syndication, I saw every friggin' episode.
Yep.
Right. And that's everyone you knew was a Simpsons watcher also saw every episode because of that syndication.
Yep.
Which was
so we could all speak the Simpsons language together and just assume anyone we were talking to had seen most of the Simpsons. Like that was just a thing I could assume of anyone I talked to in my youth.
Yep,
Except
just
like the kids whose
everybody knew.
parents were too Christian and weird about it.
Right. So now, as for the declining popularity, right? It's like I feel having not watched any episodes.
I
in
watched a
years.
bunch of episodes of like some years ago from like seasons 15, 16, 17, and they were just like, okay. Like they weren't
Okay.
They were okay. Like they weren't bad. They just weren't that funny. Like I wouldn't watch them as a primary activity.
I can't comment on their quality, but I think, there are other reasonable explanations for why the popularity has gone down. If it's not capturing a new audience, right? If it is still the same audience.
There's just attrition.
Right. Not only attrition, but it's like, we're going to see those episodes as, the best. And like, that's what you're competing with. So of course we're going to rate anything newer as not as good.
But I have experienced, like Emily went through this. A lot of people I know have gone through this of they'd never seen The Simpsons and they watched a bunch of it in the current era. And I've consistently found when I've shown people The Simpsons that they really, really get into it because I usually show them the same seasons that we know, like 4, 5, 6-ish. And then they usually discover that they don't like the later seasons at all.
It's, that's also a reasonable explanation.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, for, how many other things, right, are so long running, but have this reputation of getting worse, right? Usually things jump the shark and then they go away. Happy Days jumped the shark and it didn't last too much longer after the shark.
Yeah, they have like a sharp decline and either a rebound or a collapse. But The Simpsons just like this very, very long, slow decline.
It's like no one wants to be the person who ends it. It's like,
well, how the fuck do you even end a show like that? Like, what's the last episode?
You just don't. Why do you have to do a special last episode? Just be like, okay, what was the last episode of the current season or the previous season? Just be like, okay, no more.
That's what I would do. That's actually what the listeners were talking about that concept in the chat, and that's what I proposed earlier.
Why do you have to do a Seinfeld-style ending? People might just hate it anyway.
No, you know what I would do?
I
would just make the last episode be the Simpsons characters acting out word for word with no changes the last episode of MASH.
You could do that too.
That is what I would do. That would be very funny to me.
Yeah.
I don't know if that would be funny to anyone else.
I don't know.
But I guess before we the things I liked about The Simpsons the most, like when I think back, was like specifically Principal Skinner was the funniest character in the entire show, and I will die on that hill.
Okay, sure.
I think the best humor came out of like the spaces around Principal Skinner.
Okay.
I don't know, like what's
your all right, but he's not my favorite guy.
Because he's not funny. It's everything around him becomes funny as a result of his like extreme non-funniness, which itself is funny.
Okay.
I don't know, like what are your like what would you point to as the parts of The Simpsons you particularly enjoy?
It's weird to like I know actually I can't think of like a part. It's like which part of The Simpsons is funnier, right? It's like I don't know if there is a part that's funnier. I guess there are parts that are less funny, right? Like I didn't really care about Marge's sisters that much. They were sort of annoying, right? I wasn't, I was like, really? Okay. But I don't know. It's just like it didn't really. I think what it is like, like I was talking about, the side characters in Adventure Time, right? The Simpsons is nothing but side characters, and you're getting them all the time, all over the place. Like any episode is giving you a huge pile of them. Right?
Now you're thinking of a guy with 2 knives,
right?
That's actually from a relatively later season too.
And some of them are even, more brief, right? Like, Seed Bell guy, right? Or, right? It's like he appears. So like, what's that guy's name? I forget.
What were you talking about? I was chatting with the listener.
The guy with the seed bell.
Oh, Hans Moldman?
Hans Moleman, yeah.
How-
It's like
Do you
that
just
character
wait,
is so
Scott? Do you just
so
not
significant?
do you just not have complete encyclopedic perfect memory of the first 11 seasons of The Simpsons like I do? Is that what's
Complete
going on?
encyclopedic memory of a show I haven't watched in 20 years.
They're just burned into my brain because I watched them on loop as a kid and
And a lot of
syndication.
them are burned into my brain, but it's like, not gonna remember friggin' Hans Moleman's name at the drop of a hat here.
Yeah, I guess the real test I've noticed is that if I go watch, because I tried this a while ago too, I just went and picked clips, like I typed episode numbers of The Simpsons and watched clips. And the old episode clips, like, just almost make me want to watch that episode again, even though I literally know it by heart. And other things that I've loved in my childhood do not do that same thing to me as an adult. The Simpsons is one of the rare things. Scott and I talk about this as something that can trap you if it's on TV. Like, you're not thinking about Star Wars. You walk by a TV like you're visiting your parents and Star Wars is on TV. You just next thing you know, credits are rolling and you just sat there. And how did that happen?
Yeah, a tape of Simpsons with no ads or breaks of any kind can definitely just trap a person there watching it, right? At least if it's good episodes and such, for however long, right?
Weird. A listener tried to tell you it was Hans Moleman before I corrected or I pointed it out, and it was blocked and flagged as a possibly inappropriate comment for some reason.
Hans Moleman is an inappropriate comment?
YouTube, I had
Maybe there's something we don't know.
I don't know.
Maybe it's in another language. I don't know.
Hans Moleman.
I'm sorry if Hans Moleman means something that I don't know. I'm clueless. Please inform me so I don't,
Well, I did click the button to let it appear on our YouTube stream, so.
Oh, well, I hope that wasn't a mistake.
But, yeah, The Simpsons, I think at this point, it's almost funnier to just see how long they can keep it going. But I don't want to watch any episodes of it. I just want to see, like, if The Simpsons outlives me, that is legendary. Yeah, considering that I started watching it basically like from the beginning. It has been such a big part of my life.
Right. I mean, assuming that I live as long as I would like, right? If it outlives me, considering that the people making it were adults when I was a child,
they're likely all dead. That outlived everyone.
It will be very likely that the people who are making it, right, were not alive, are younger than the thing they're making, right? Like, nobody who works on The Simpsons would have been alive when the first episode of The Simpsons aired.
If the Venture Brothers doesn't get canceled, like if it gets picked up, I feel like that'll be true of that because it takes them so long to make a season.
Oh, okay. That's... but it's way, way less seasons.
It does. It's got like 7, and it's taken them how long? But yeah, if you've somehow never watched The Simpsons, like, just start at like season 4 or 5 and just watch a bunch of episodes and you'll see what we mean. I think you'll find it.
It is nice that it's not, there's so many things these days are cereals. Cereals are all the hotness, right?
Yep.
But
you don't need to know
Simpsons.
anything about The Simpsons. Literally nothing. Like, just pick a random episode between seasons 4 and 8 and you pretty much can't go wrong unless, I'm looking at this chart, season 6, episode 3 is the only early season episode to have a very low rating.
I think that would be like a clip. That's a clip show, I think.
And that low rating is still higher than many of the ratings from later. So
because they're good clips. They're good clips. But
season 9, episode 11. That's the lowest one. What the fuck was that episode? I want to look that up before we stop the show. Season 9, episode 11. 9 episodes.
Yeah, Rim found a JPEG that has average ratings by IMDb people. So people who care enough about The Simpsons to rate episodes and then average their ratings together per episode and then put them in a visualization by season.
9,
so you can see.
Not episode 12. Come on. It keeps pointing. Oh, here we go. I want to know what this episode was.
Yeah.
Clip show. Highlighting the musical moment. Okay, yeah, it was just a clip show.
Yep. But yeah, I think The Simpsons, by going so long, they had to do they've done everything, but that means they had to do everything, right? They had to do musicals, sentimental parts, mystery plots, right? It's like sci-fi, lots of horror.
We didn't even talk about Who Shot Mr. Burns, which was like a legit cultural event in America.
Yep. It was huge.
People talked about that like it was real. Like, until we found out Who Shot Mr. Burns, like, you don't understand. You could not avoid that conversation anywhere. Everyone had a theory.
It was probably maybe the pink Simpsons moment, right? I don't think Simpsons has ever been bigger in the consciousness.
But that itself was just parodying Who Shot JR.
Of course.
Which is the last thing I'll leave you with. I have found that one thing that has been consistent in my life since about 2008 is that I run into a lot of people who will notice a reference in a more current thing and say, oh, that's a reference to The Simpsons, and have no idea that it is actually a reference to like Treasure of the Sierra Madre.
Yep, of
like
course.
The Simpsons became like, because The Simpsons parodied and referenced so many things that it becomes the nexus point of references, and people don't try to look earlier than it. They just assume it came from The Simpsons.
If I tell a joke someone else told and I don't immediately say that is so and so's joke, right?
Krusty, if this is anyone but you're stealing my bit.
And then you laugh at it, and then now that in your brain is a Scott joke, even though I stole it from someone else. It's just how are you to know unless someone points it out to you? Right?
Yeah.
So how many people just quote Star Wars and nobody's giving a shit about Hidden Fortress? Or anyway.
I think that was a solid show.
Okay.